Acknowledgement of country. And we pay our respects to all First Nations elders, both past and present, across all lands where Charles Sturt University staff and students reside. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country. We also pay respects to other Aboriginal people and elders present here. And, I've jumped the entire presentation, my apologies. So we've got 4 terrific presentations today. Jessica Sears and Kathleen Smithers are going to talk about the impact of work integrated learning on teacher education students' teacher efficacy. That is a word that always stuffs me up. Jodie Brabin, is this the end of assessment due dates? Oh, please. Applying a hyper-flexible approach to teaching postgraduate health management and leadership students. I think I put the wrong emphasis there. That's okay. Suzanne Hopf, Cyrena Hunt-Madden, Caitlin Slaney and Laura Doig, speech language pathology, virtual work, integrated learning experiences, and the work in the virtual world is fantastic. I'm really interested to see what happens there. And Saeed Shaeri, I apologize, Saeed, if I've got that a little wrong, but perceptions of students and industry about work placement. And as I am very involved with work placement with education, I am very interested to see what's happening there. I'll be timing all the speakers and giving a 1-minute warning towards the end of every 10-minute section. There'll be a 15-minute Q&A at the end. So if you can keep your questions until that time, that would be very helpful. And I have enabled screen sharing. So I'd like to invite Jessica Sears and Kathleen Smithers to take the first presentation. Please let me know if you can't share.
Just sharing now.
Fantastic.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess and I teach in the School of Education.
And I also teach in the School of Education. And I'm Kathleen Smithers.
And so what we're presenting on today is obviously, as Heather said, was looking at particularly teacher efficacy and how that could be developed. And so, sorry, I teach a subject, EHR 305, which is based around young people and health advocacy. And it's a subject where I am essentially preparing future health and physical education teachers to teach really tough topics like sexual health and mental health. Now, we know through research that teacher efficacy impacts a lot of things. It obviously impacts their confidence and competence to teach something, which in turn affects their curriculum coverage. It also affects teachers staying within the profession and their general well-being. So the initiative that we implemented into this subject was, how do we actually build our students' confidence and competence to be prepared to go out into schools and teach? And so the way we did this was by actually forming a partnership with a local high school, Kelso High School here in Bathurst. Slide. And so it's actually grown and developed over the years with feedback from students and feedback from the school and from my own personal reflections. And so the way it was set up was that students spend the first 6 weeks of semester learning pedagogical approaches and content and theory. And then they go out into the school, they prepare lessons, they go out into the school and they just teach for a lesson rather than that typical 4-week or 6-week block work integrated learning placement. So it was like these little micro sessions. And so the first year they just went out and taught once and we debriefed and reflected. After that, we've actually developed it so that way they now go out and they teach multiple lessons. And in between each lesson they go out and teach, we come back to the university, they reflect on that practice, they make improvements to their teaching, and they go out again. And so there's a really unique situation that's very different to other work integrated learning in that they're going between the workplace and the university. I, as the academic, are there when they're doing these micro little sessions. And there's also the industry partners. So they're getting the feedback from everyone all at once, rather than placement and university sitting quite separately.
All right, so we used the student evaluation report data and interviews with students and also their assessment tasks that were reflections to look at what was happening in the subject, whether it was working, and whether students liked it. And so we saw a significant increase in the positive response rate to the student evaluation survey. So not only were they really enjoying the subject, they also highlighted that they had increased confidence and competence to teach the more difficult topics in the classroom. So we have here the student evaluation reports over time. So we've seen a significant increase in the positive response rate from 2021 to 2022, but then a sustained positive response continuing on from that. So it wasn't just randomly all of the students that year seemed to like it. We actually are seeing a continued positive response to this subject in the way that it is designed. And this also comes out in the qualitative comments where students are saying it's highly beneficial because it increased my confidence. It's the best subject I've done so far. This is what all subjects should involve. The ability to teach in the classroom and practice was really important. They really enjoyed being in the school to practice what they were learning in class. And they very particularly liked that it helped them to teach the tough topics. I'm personally not a PE teacher, but I could imagine it would be very daunting to talk about sex with teenagers for the first time if you've never ever had a practice. So the students really appreciated that opportunity to practice the harder topics before it felt more real, I guess, on a placement. This also came out in their reflections, where a lot of them discussed how much confidence they had now. So it wasn't just that they liked this subject, it was actually helping them for future teaching placements, but also for their future teaching careers. They said they gained confidence as the lessons progressed. They realized that their fears about teaching and their future teaching placements were perhaps irrational, as one of them says. One of them has said that I feel confident to do this full time now. The more classes I had, I gained more knowledge about the content. They learned more about using body language, nonverbal behavior management strategies, but also, as I said, it helped them to deal with the tough topics that PDHB teachers are inevitably going to have to teach and deal with in their classrooms. These are discussions that they can't avoid. So it helped them to feel like they could, approach this with confidence, particularly on future placements where they might not have an academic supporting them.
And so looking to the future, but also I know not everyone here is School of Ed, so also thinking about what is the potential for this for other areas. So as far as this initiative is concerned, next year we will be cascading this across all 4 campuses. So up until now, it's only run at Kelso. As the academic on this subject, it has meant a lot of hours spent in the setup because obviously it's partnership and relationship building with schools, but that it is well worth it because once those relationships are established, you have a subject that has obviously got very positive impacts on students and their outcomes. We've had huge, strong school stakeholder interest. So whilst here in Bathurst, Kelso High School has been the school that we've had the partnership with this, I've had other schools within Bathurst reach out to me and ask if they can now be a part of this and whether our students can actually go to their schools for part of this. And so one area I see it working for other discipline areas is if there is work integrated learning rather than before they go on that big block. So this actually happens before our students go on their first 4-week placement, giving them that opportunity to do these micro sessions with their peers, so they're not alone, with the academic and with the industry partners. It's kind of a soft landing for them before that larger block placement, and it kind of gets them over that initial nervousness for that. So that would be my recommendation. I'm guessing, Heather, you're giving us our 1-minute warning.
I will. Yes, you're fine. You've got about 3 minutes left.
I'd ask if anyone's got any questions, but I think we'll leave them till the end. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Well, honestly speaking, as someone who's, as you're aware, Jessica, very heavily involved in final prac, I think this is a terrific idea, and it certainly reflects some of what used to happen. There used to be placements that would extend 1 day a week for several weeks before they went on the placement. And interestingly, back then, it was the teachers themselves who were resistant because they felt it disrupted the classroom. So I think that I would suggest that this success means that you have really facilitated this beautifully, and that you've got a fantastic relationship with the teachers in your area to enable this to be such a positive experience.
Well, the teachers said that it's been great professional development for them themselves, sitting in and watching it. So it's been, and I think too, it's not that 1 day a week, it's literally 2 hours. Instead of them having a tutorial at the university, we're at the school. And being with their peer rather than that 1 day a week by themselves. So that way they see, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that makes a mistake. Because when they go out in workplace, they're comparing themselves to people that have been in the industry for years and have got a lot of knowledge. Whereas when in this situation, they're there with their peers and seeing we're all actually at that starter stage.
Yeah, it's a nice comment. And I think the more connection we get within the profession and the industry generally, the better it is. You know, we used to go out on to check their placement, and we don't do that anymore. And I think that that's a vital connection that's been lost. So I think that anything that we can do to actually establish and further relationships with schools is fabulous. And it sounds like this one's been very successful. All right, we've got 50 seconds. Oh, and we're back with everybody else. Thank you so much, Jessica and Kath. And if you have questions that you think about, in the meantime, please keep them ready, because we will have a 15-minute session shortly at the end of this hour. All right, so next we're going to Jodie. And is this the end of assessment due dates? Oh, please, Jodie, save us all. Really looking forward to this. A hyper-flexible approach, everything good about that.
Great. Can everyone see my screen presentation?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay, fabulous. It's coming up. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So my name is Jodie. I'm a lecturer in health management and leadership in the School of Nursing, Paramedicine and Health Sciences. I wanted to start by acknowledging my discipline lead, Sam, who is assisting me in this evaluation of the use of hyperflexible teaching within our health management graduate certificate. Right, so the catalyst for this pilot really came about from this question: how can we better support students to complete their studies? The HML grad certificate is delivered entirely online through micro sessions with each subject worth 4 credit points. Although we have comparatively small student numbers, between 30 and 35 for our 74 session, our cohort are generally older, working full-time with additional caring responsibilities. We know that students completing online courses experience higher attrition than face-to-face courses, and we know that more women than men prefer to study online, which is important as healthcare is a female-dominated industry. We've also learned through the 2022 Oscillate Horizon report that flexibility, asynchronous and online deliveries is a continuing trend that we need to keep up with if we're to grow our program into the future. So as many of you are aware, the health industry has been under a bit of pressure in recent years. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, workforce shortages, burnout, significant issues with staff attrition were affecting most aspects of the system, and were particularly pronounced in regional and rural areas, which is where most of our students are from. And the pandemic has really only exacerbated this issue, and further major system changes occurring due to Royal Commission recommendations, industrial action, funding shortages, changes in government and broader macroeconomic pressures has created additional complexity for healthcare managers. The repercussions of this system disruption include persistent workforce challenges, ongoing staff attrition, and a rising imperative to address the escalating health demands amid diminishing resources. So it's within this increasingly complex environment that our students are working and trying to study. So what did we do? What did we do differently this session? So with all this in mind, we wanted to try a new way of delivering subjects which would accommodate our student body and enable them to continue their studies alongside their high work pressure commitments. So the hyperflexible approach has 3 significant changes to the traditional delivery model. Firstly, all topics and assessment resources are available from the point of subject outline release. So for keen students, this gives them an additional 2 weeks on top of their 8-week session to engage with the content. Instructions and supports are front-loaded so that there should not be any barriers to students in completing or even submitting assessments. Tutorials were replaced with Q&A sessions. As students are all progressing at different paces, the Q&A session enabled students to discuss where they're up to, ask assessment questions, or bring up broader issues or course questions rather than being topic specific. And finally, the big one, there are no assessment due dates. So Turnitin portals are available from the first day of session and did not close until the last day. So students submit whenever they want. Assessments were designed using authentic design principles, which addressed academic integrity concerns, and assessments were marked within 10 days of submission, and the assessment 1 papers returned to students so that the feedback could be used to inform their next assessment. Final assessments were not released until the end of session to accommodate the moderation process. So part of the sort of motivation for this approach was based on a 2021 study that was published in The Conversation, where they trialled this approach with a small sample of undergraduate students at Central Queensland University. The report from the students involved was generally positive. In particular, they found the approach enabled a more accessible form of delivery and reduced stress around assessments. The limitations identified in the study mostly related to students feeling isolated from their peers and limited opportunities for peer collaboration and engagement. So given the nature of the student cohort in HML, the findings from this study appeared to suit our particular program, accommodating student diversity, managing stress, providing greater opportunities for students to structure their studies themselves based on their interests, needs, and other priorities. Based on the student survey, we had quite a good response from students, which is the quotes that you can see on your screen. Additionally, we had very positive response across all the standard questions that were asked in the student survey. We also asked some specific ones to see how students felt about this teaching approach, and we had 100% positive response when asked if they liked the format of the course. We also asked if being involved in an online learning study group with other students is important, and 50% of students agreed with this statement. So from past subject deliveries, peer-to-peer engagement has been quite difficult, and it was useful to understand how much this aspect of learning was valued by the students. Interestingly, only 10% of students in one subject and 16% in the other answered in the negative to the question, my learning was enhanced through created opportunities for interaction with other students in discussions, projects, and learning activities. So students were provided with topic-specific Padlets or interactive quizzes to promote peer-to-peer learning. There was limited engagement with this, however. We know from the research and from our experience, when you increase the flexibility of the course delivery, it does decrease peer-to-peer engagement. So it was really important for us to understand if this was a trade-off our students were comfortable to make. In terms of submission, the earliest assessment was submitted within 2 weeks of the session commencing, with a fairly consistent rate of submission throughout the session. There were, however, still a substantial number of assessments submitted within the last few days of the session, which was expected given the way that the subject was designed. And student attendance in Q&A sessions dropped off significantly after the first 3 weeks, with most weeks no students attending at all. And we also held additional drop-in consultation sessions weekly, and that only attracted 1 student the entire time. So how is this teaching approach different from a convener's perspective? There were 3 key areas. Firstly, preparation. You have to have everything developed and delivered early, all your content, assessment submission portals, and supports. It all needs to be clear and complete, as it needs to be consistent throughout the session, so students are not disadvantaged at all. Additionally, the Q&A sessions could be about any topic, so you need to also ensure that you're across everything in preparation for each week. Secondly, student check-ins. So although students did not attend the scheduled Q&A sessions frequently, I did end up doing more and more one-on-one sessions with students at different times. Given students did not have to submit early in the session, it was also harder to identify students who were disengaged or experiencing challenges. This meant there was actually more GP extensions right at the end of the session than we would see in our traditionally delivered subject. This, however, could be overcome through more proactive student check-ins throughout the session. Alternatively, there has been some suggestion in the literature to arrange one-on-one meetings with students during O week, in which students set their own due dates at that point. So that also could be a solution to that issue. And finally, marking. So the benefits to marking is that it's more consistent. So I marked for a few hours every week to get through them and return them to the students rather than having those sort of 4 spikes throughout the session. The drawback is that some students don't submit any assessment until the final day of session. And as it's a micro session, we have a very short turnaround time for moderation. So all those papers need to be finalized and moderated within a limited time frame. In comparison to how we would run a traditional micro session, however, the difference in workload regarding marking was not significant. So I hope I've sold you on the merits of this approach. However, there are some things to consider if this is a model you're interested in adopting within your own teaching area. Firstly, the size and maturity of the student cohort is an important consideration. We were working with postgraduate students, most with 10 years of professional experience in the workplace, and most whom had already completed at least 1, if not more sessions when this model was introduced. We also had a smaller cohort compared to traditional undergraduate subjects, for example. I think these factors are important reasons as to why this trial works so successfully. Additionally, I did all the marking and teaching. So I was a teaching team of 1. In the 2021 Central Queensland University study, they had a teaching team of 3 and they were able to run the subject using a hyperflexible approach. However, they did raise challenges with coordinating marking in particular, and this would be further complicated with the use of external or sessional markers. And finally, the HML program follows a constructivist design, and it really focuses on workplace application. So assessments are designed using authentic design principles, and students have a lot of flexibility and control over what they focus on and how they express themselves in their assessments. The hyperflexible model fits well within this pedagogical approach and is in some ways a natural extension of it. So for more prescriptive assessments with group components or less flexible assessment tasks, coordination and academic integrity issues may create challenges taking a hyperflexible approach. In summary, like everything, there are both benefits and drawbacks, but for the HML students, overall, it's a model that better accommodates and supports the challenging balancing act our students are doing between their work commitments and their academic demands. Thank you.
Thank you, Jodie. That was fascinating. I had a whole lot of questions and you kept answering me.
Oh, good.
As I went along. But what about, I still have a couple, but I'll save them for the Q&A part.
Okay.
Really, lots of good stuff there. All right, now we're on to Suzanne Hopf, Cyrena Hunt-Madden, Caitlin Slaney, and Laura Doig, who are going to talk about speech-language pathology, virtual work-integrated learning experiences. So fabulous stuff. Off you go.
Thank you. I'm just pressing the present button. Cool. All right. So I am Caitlin Slaney. I will be presenting on behalf of my co-workers on students' confidence and competence using telepractice before and after a speech language pathology virtual work integrated learning experience. So I'd also just first off like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we're all on today, wherever that is in Australia, and on Aboriginal land. We acknowledge that many cultures live on this land, and we should collectively respect the land, its past and present story for our future generations to enjoy. So this is just a quick overview of what I will be going through today. So telepractice is acknowledged as a valid, affordable and accessible alternate to face-to-face clinical interactions across many disciplines, including speech-language pathology. And further, specifically for speech-language pathology, it is recognised as a value practice approach, both locally and internationally by our governing bodies, and is sometimes the preferred method of service delivery for different areas of practice due to the ability and shortages of our current speech pathology workforce. Therefore, university speech-language pathology programs have a responsibility to ensure that their graduates are skilled in relation to providing telepractice methods. So to do this, virtual work integrated learning provides an opportunity for students to develop these skills in relation to having a tele-supervised context. And students' perception of their competence with telepractice ultimately influences their confidence using this method after graduation. So understanding the impact of virtual work integrated learning experiences on students' telepractice confidence and competence is presently unreported in the data. So just a quick defining aspect. So competence is how good you are at something versus confidence is how good you think you are at something. And competence is something that individuals acquire and develop over time, whereas confidence is a bit more complicated. So it has both external and internal factors. So an individual's belief in their abilities in relation to their internal confidence, but whereas those external beliefs is in relation to how others perceive their confidence. And these are both linked to a person's perceived competence. However, confidence displayed by an individual does not always equate to their competence. And to provide a high quality speech language pathology service, you require both confidence and competence, which therefore relates to your overall capabilities. So in relation to our research questions, we explored whether students' confidence and then separately their competence administering paediatric assessments using telepractice changed over completing a 1.5-day virtual work integrated learning experience and why this was a change or no change. We also explored what do clinical educators believe are the facilitators and barriers to students' confidence and competence growth on a virtual work integrated learning placement. So this prospective mixed method study applied a cross-sequential survey design, and it was validating data through triangulation of both some qualitative data, which was our open-ended questions, which expanded on the quantitative data, which was our closed questions. And this was collected from 2 consecutive surveys with 2 separate clinical groups of students and clinical educators. So what did our participants look like? So our participants included 106 students from the Masters of Speech Pathology program enrolled at Charles Sturt University. And this was provided in a first-year subject containing virtual work integrated learning. So in 2022, we had 40 students, and in 2023, we had 62. So of these 106 students, 82 completed the pre-survey, and 65 completed the post-survey. In relation to our clinical educators, we had 4 separate clinical educators, 2 each year, with an average years of practice being 12.5 years. Now jumping to our results. So a person's confidence was in relation to their assessment confidence. So they had a mean of 3.39 prior, and that jumped to a mean of 5.06. In relation to their telepractice confidence, we had a mean of 3.59, and that jumped to a mean of 5.15. And both these sets of data had statistically significant increases with a p-value of 0.001. So before the placement, the majority of virtual work integrated learning students expressed anxiety about using telepractice, despite most of them being technology savvy due to having an online degree. Post the virtual work integrated learning experience, students acknowledged a growth in their confidence, but were still cautious about overstating their competence. And this was often noticed as a consequence of greater awareness of the actual complexities that's involved. In relation to our clinical educators, they acknowledged that the feedback in relation to it being a genuine experience, and it was a supported and structured learning experience. In relation to our competence, so this again had a statistically significant increase. So for our assessment competence, we had a mean of 3.16, which jumped to a mean of 4.94. In relation to the telepractice component, we had a mean of 3.43, which jumped to a mean of 5.18. In relation to some of our qualitative data, the students expressed feedback in relation to self-initiated learning experience, including different practice areas in terms of that paediatric assessment. But it was also an opportunity for building reflective practice skills and collaboration with peers. In relation to our clinical educators, they talked about the diversity of the population groups that the students were able to see. These included kids with complex speech, language and communication needs, as well as diversity in relation to being both local and internationally based. It was also an opportunity for collaboration, which required commitment on both sides, which were necessary for success. And it was also an opportunity to build multitasking skills in relation to managing technology, the assessment tools, and the child in the room as well. And this is something that we quite often find students struggle with. So in relation to our overall discussion and conclusion, so all students experienced growth from participating in this virtual work integrated learning experience. And as it was part of a uni subject, they were also assessed based on the rubric, and all students passed this assessment item. So what we know about the Dunning-Kruger effect is that our confidence changes over time as our competence develops. And this is not a straightforward process, but this was kind of matched in relation to the data that we experienced, with students realising the complexities that were involved and then starting to build that confidence as their competence increases. So where to next? We feel it is really important to build and continue our ongoing collaboration, because we had the opportunity to build connections and awareness within a community, and there was also an opportunity to reach unserviced or underserviced service areas. Virtual work integrated learning is a valuable workplace learning setting. So there was also no significant differences in terms of the client population groups, in terms of whether they were both locally or internationally based. So this further emphasises the equivalence of experience of homeland versus international placements. Further, it's important to continue that collaboration and connection that was offered throughout this opportunity, both from peer-to-peer relationships, but also peer-to-clinical educator relationships, as there was different starting points in terms of their confidence, but this was not always directly linked to their competence. So in relation to some of our limitations, so the tools we used was a general survey tool. So this had no validation outside this study. However, we were able to triangulate the data from both the qualitative and quantitative components of our survey. So future studies could focus on focus groups and compare in-person international and online international. So they have the same location, but different placement, virtual or non-virtual opportunities.
That's your 1 minute warning, Caitlin.
Thank you. I would finally like to acknowledge the speech pathology master's students who were our students in this group, but also thank the staff, students and families of our screening sites, both locally and internationally. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That is fascinating. You stole my Dunning-Kruger joke. I was going to do a Dunning-Kruger joke. Great fan.
Bet you to it.
And we had an instance of a student the other day saying, oh, I don't know why we come to uni. We know everything at Pratt. And then proceeded to try and deal with the gradual release of responsibility by saying it's you do, I do, we do, you be do, we do. And it was, very impressive. Thank you. And like, this seems such the way of the future. And the thing that excites me about it is actually serving places that would otherwise not have, that would otherwise not have access to the kind of services that you're talking about. That's really exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to your colleagues too, Suzanne, Cyrena and Laura. They're great work. And last, but by no means least, Saeed, who is going to be talking to us about the perceptions of students and industry about work placement. Again, fascinating work considering our areas and the way we are trying to incorporate professional experience into our courses. So where are you, Saeed? I can't. Oh, there you are. Sorry, right there. Hello. Yes, wave madly. Thank you very much. And your 10 minutes is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Heather. And it was great listening to Kathleen as well. Many things are similar, or I can show and then do the comparison between what we do in engineering and the other subjects. So let me share my screen. Yep, my name is Saeed Shaeri. I'm one of the engineering lecturers here at CSU. As you can see, the topic is perception of engineering students and industry hosts of work placement. A little bit very short about the courses that we have at CSU. We have 3 different courses. One is semi-normal Bachelor of Engineering, which is only civil engineering. The other one is Master of Engineering. This one is 2 years, and the exciting one for me is the combined degree that we have, Bachelor of Technology, Master of Engineering, both of them civil. which is a 5.5 years degree. Now, the point about this last one is that we actually have students for 3 sessions on campus. Everything happens face-to-face. And then we say goodbye to them. They go to workplaces. We have 4 years of fully paid industry placement for our students. This whole thing inspired us to do a little bit of research to see what's happening and how things are related. And at the same time, I had the opportunity to join some of the colleagues at Griffith University. So I'm going to talk about this project and only the side of the results which is relevant to CSU at this stage. And very soon we will have the publication for the entire research. So a little bit about the project. This is funded by Australasian Association for Engineering Education, which is a part of Engineers Australia. As I mentioned, we are doing this together, School of Engineering and Built Environment at Griffith University and CSU. The aim of the project is to investigate the students' perception of industry work and how it is aligned with what industry actually needs and expects from our students. And it's going to be very exciting and kind of different because the way that Griffith does it is totally different than CSU. It's only for 3 months, only for 1 session, and it's happening at the end of the 4-year degree in their bachelor's program. But for us, it's 4 full years of placement. It is paid. It's going to be at different places, so totally different. And I'm very excited to see the outcome, do the comparison between these 2 universities, and also be able to compare with other offerings of engineering across Australia. So we started collecting data earlier this year. Griffith is still collecting data, but for us, the collection finished because it's only 1 full year. They can do it 3 times, but we can only do 1 time. And as I said, I'm going to show you the results for CSU part at this stage. So the questions that we have for the survey is, as you know, about the demography and general question, as in age and gender, and the program they are doing. Again, for us is only civil, but at Griffith, so many different engineering programs. Where they are, the students, where they are placed in the placement, and also if they have any background, any prior engineering internship or workplace experience, etc. Then there were a series of questions about different aspects of their studies and their internship and how they could be influential in their success, and a series of questions about their skills and attributes currently and the influence for the future in industry. And finally, some kind of general open-ended question about the perception of their knowledge and their skills and their relevancy between these things and what industry needs. As I mentioned, the survey was not only for students, for industry as well, and similar questions for industry, but I'm not going to present those here because of the time limit that we have. So in terms of gender at CSU, we have about 80 students, 30 of them responded to my request, 24 male, 6 female students, and this is the distribution of age, mostly between 20 and 24 years of age. Then in terms of the program, those 3 programs that we have, the majority of responses are from the combined degree because we do have more students in that. But the good point for me is that we also receive responses from those students in the Master of Engineering program. Most of them joined us after finishing a degree in another university, having work experience, etc. And it's very important for us to know their perception and their understanding rather than being here at CSU from day one and being affected by the way that we taught them. So as you can see, prior engineering experience, 12 said yes, which is great, about half. And in terms of their position in those 4 years of placement, this is the distribution. So of course, the majority didn't do any placement at CSU. But again, if you look at the total, more than half has done any kind of placement before. So my focus now is on those questions which is relevant to previous studies or internships, how they helped particular aspects. For example, the relevance to the ability to solve problems. This is the distribution. Almost 50 said agree and 30 said strongly agree that the previous internship helped them to improve the ability to solve problems. Then hands-on engineering skills. Again, the distribution of the yellow and blue colors, as you can see, is almost the same. So I'm going to show you these things almost quickly. I'm not going to stay on every single one of them and explain all those numbers. But for me, a broad view is that it's almost 40-50, and this one is almost 20-30 in terms of agree or strongly agree. Technical knowledge, written communication skills, almost the same distribution. Presentation skills, yes, great. Understanding of ethical conduct, yes, they did have a good understanding. I mean, they learned so many good things and then were able to perform well in their work placement. And the ability to work as a team member, again, because we do have a lot of subjects with teams and projects rather than individual performance. And confidence in tackling unfamiliar problems. That's exactly what we need for engineers. I'm sure for other disciplines, the same. So what we are teaching you, are you able to then perform and solve other problems and work in other projects or not? An understanding of health and safety, which is absolutely important. Am I designing correctly or not? But understanding of the contribution to society, yes, this is what we really need from our students to know they are able to change something in society. And also the very important aspects of the First Nation people, what I'm designing, does it match or does it interfere with what needs to be done for First Nation people? And at this time, as you can see, this gray area, neither agree nor disagree, is a little bit larger than the other ones, though that's an aspect we need to work on to understand why this happened, why this distribution is different, as well as this one. The importance of future employability. Of course, this is clear when I have the chance to start my placement and get paid full-time staff while I'm still doing my degree and I don't have a degree, then my future workplace is guaranteed. I would stay in that place, or I easily can find another place because I have done some great stuff in a workplace. And then there was a different question. Enough knowledge and skills relevant to upcoming industry placement. So did we teach enough? Are they ready or not? And this was the distribution that they say, I'm not too sure, 23%, or I agree and disagree, 63% in total, which is a great outcome, but still a good chance for us to work on the group in orange or gray area to be sure why they don't think that they are ready for placement. Then this is a little challenging part. Did you show me anything, Heather?
Sorry, and I forgot to unmute. 1 minute warning.
Absolutely, good. So the last question was, this is the list of your 10 skills. Can you rank them? So as you can see, do I have the design skills, hands-on engineering skills, problem solving, teamwork, concern for safety, discipline, knowledge, motivation, professional presentation, ethics, communication, and also understanding of the basics of engineering? We as teachers have our own ideas. And by the time we ask a student, it was really interesting. So these 10 skills were grouped by students like this. The first top 3 for them are communication, teamwork, leadership, and project management skills. The bottom ones are understanding of the basics of engineering. Oh my God, when you don't know, how are you gonna be performing well? But this is what they decided. And professional presentation, ethics and concern for safety. I would personally put these two on the top as well, but they decided not to. And we need to find why this is the distribution. And we are busy doing that. I mean, having extra focus groups and talking to different students, and again, comparing these results with the Griffiths ones to see why the perceptions are different. And at the same time, comparing with what industry says, which is again, totally different to this. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Saeed. I find that last bit absolutely fascinating. I bet you there was raised eyebrows everywhere. Yeah, and I also thought that it was one thing that did strike me, the readiness. That's something that when we do sort of exit interviews with our students, they frequently say, oh, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And then when they get out in the world, they go, oh, actually, yeah, now I understand why we got taught that. And I actually have that in my kit bag. Who knew? So I think that it's a common experience of pre-graduates before they go out, they're faced with, oh, I can't do this. And then they get out there and they find that actually, yeah, you can.
Absolutely right. And the same as what we heard in the first presentation, we go to the workplace and see the challenges there, and I'm not alone. I know exactly what needs to be done. Correct.
The other thing that stood out to me was the 24 blokes and 4 women. Got to get those numbers up.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, no, we don't have enough women in engineering, but we are after that. We are really excited to see that day, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Saeed. Really interesting stuff.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we are actually now at the point where we are going to have, hopefully, can you see the, yes, you can. Good Lord. The questions. I hope that's just up there on the screen. Anyone would like to start with any questions for any of our presenters? Just to recap, we had Jessica and Kathleen with the impact of work integrated learning on teacher education students' teacher efficacy. We had Jodie Brabin with Is This the End of Assessment Due Dates? Applying a hyper-flexible approach to teaching postgraduate health management and leadership students. Suzanne Hopf, Cyrena Hunt-Madden, presented by Caitlin Slaney and Laura Doig, Speech Language Pathology, Virtual Work Integrated Learning Experiences, and Saeed Shaeri, Perceptions of Students and Industry about Work Placement. So if anyone would like to put your hands up, and we should be able to get, I'm just trying to get my whole screen happening. Great, Koshila.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning, everyone. Really enjoyed those 4 presentations. I have a question for Jodie, if that's all right, Jodie, with you. So I was thinking about what you were saying around, once you increase the flexibility, that peer-to-peer interaction falls off. And I was thinking, if we think that learning is primarily a social activity that we learn when we're talking to each other and we're questioning each other and we're having that dialogue with each other, and that's so important for learning. It's not just me and a book. So what are your reflections about how we kind of support that social element of learning in a hyper-flexible model? I know you touched on that and you talked about how you have those drop-in sessions, but how do we really kind of re-engage students in the peer-to-peer work is what I'm
Yeah, so there's a couple, this is an issue we have even when we do the course traditionally. We do try to use sort of Padlets and have topic specific questions. I set up for this one, which I hadn't done in the past, I set up like a student space where they could sort of share resources and ideas. It was pretty much not utilized at all, but that was one idea we had. We do in other subjects, use blogs for one of the assessments as a way of getting students to sort of be able to learn from each other. And so it's that, whatever the topic is, and then they have to apply it to their workplace. So that way it's sort of, it has that sort of authentic application. And that sort of, we've had sort of mixed feedback regarding that as a way of learning from others. And we also do 90-second elevator pitch, but it's all passive. It's passive learning in the sense that there's no dialogue there. It's just learning from others. It's not necessarily a two-way communication street. But outside of those models, we haven't come up with many strategies that have been well liked by students and been effective, and that would work within a hyper flexible approach. We have used assessments that are based on, you know, do a post, respond to somebody's post, you know, have a dialogue via the discussion board, but that model wouldn't work if you don't have assessment due dates. So yeah, it's still a challenge that we haven't overcome. Suggestions would be welcome if anyone else has some ideas.
No, it's the eternal challenge, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's the eternal challenge working online.
Yeah.
The breakout rooms tend to work pretty well when you've got a lot of people together, but if you're doing it in a time, you know, where they're doing it asynchronously,
yeah, exactly. I mean, the only thing I'd say is that we do, because they're postgraduates, we don't find that they seem to want as much of that peer relationship as you would probably find in an undergraduate, because it's not their social, they're not getting any sort of social value out of their university experience like you would see within an undergraduate context. So I mean, I think it's also partly the cohort are a bit different and their priorities are different.
Yeah, definitely. Suzanne, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to buy into this, because I mean, our Masters of Speech is a hybrid program, and we have a lot of the same sounding cohort with very complicated lives, balancing multiple responsibilities. And what our students say to us is that it's the intensive schools for them where they really build those connections, and that are so important to keeping them engaged and lowering attrition. But I was thinking, how do you do an intensive school in a hyper-flexible delivery mode? Yeah. Is it possible even if everybody's at different stages of their learning?
Yeah, not... There is a model that we saw that Monash used, where you do a 3-day intensive and then you have a 3-week online. So you come in for 3 days and then the remaining 3 weeks is online. And that's sort of, which is sort of a hybrid, but it's for one subject. So you would have that opportunity to build that sort of interpersonal relationships while they're in person. And then the remaining course is done sort of asynchronously and can be hyper flexible as well. So that's sort of I mean, it's another sort of hybrid on the flexible approach as well.
Thank you so much. I actually had a question for the first presenters, Jessica and Kathleen. In terms of the work that they're doing, dealing with difficult topics, and they're teaching students, I'd just like a little bit more information, I guess, on how they're approached those difficult topics, because there's lots of difficult topics in speech, but whether you're dealing with children and disclosures and things like that, is there any advice you can give?
Yeah, so obviously teaching sexual health, like I've got to prepare my students to teach it from essentially kindergarten right through to year 12. So we're talking 5-year-olds right through to 18-year-olds. And obviously, depending on that age group, it changes what you're teaching and how you're teaching it. We did actually this semester have a student gave an open disclosure in the classroom to my students, and they didn't realize that they were actually disclosing anything at the time, because it was around, the session was on consent and ages of consent and things like that. And it was a very good learning experience. As horrible as the situation was, it was a good learning experience for my students to see what is the procedure and what gets done. So we spend a lot of time briefing the students on what they do if something is disclosed, which is in schools, you immediately report to the principal. You don't stop, you don't ask someone, is this a disclosure or not? It is straight to the principal. The 6 weeks before they go out to the schools, they are very, very well prepared with essentially, how do we teach this stuff? What do we say? What are the approaches? Where is the line? What can and can't you say? How do you, if a student says something that's not appropriate, how do you deal with that and things like that? So I don't know if that answers your question, Suzanne, or if you want to follow up to get...
And something that you do.
No, that's great, thanks.
Get them to practice in class.
So I actually prepare them. collated a list of questions. I call them, tricky questions that I've been asked over the years from students, and I get them to actually practice answering them. So there's about 50 on the list. And they're all sorts of things from like, why does my penis go in and out, to like all sorts of things that it's just like, you're like, oh, wow, you've actually asked that. Or, you know, if I digitally penetrate a girl and then use that same hand to put on a condom, can I get an STD? Or if I go down on him, then he kisses me, then goes down on me, can I get pregnant? So they sound like, I apologize if anyone's a bit shocked by these questions, but there's legitimate questions I've been asked in the class. So we prepare them with giving them the right skills to answer those questions in a informative but in an appropriate manner as well.
That's good. I think that's really important. And having taught sex education in primary school, the questions that I got were not quite like that. It was rather more like, I heard girls have got a Labrador or a Volvo, which was always were some of my favorites. And you have to have the language, and you have to have that willingness to be open and calm with them. And you know, they tend to respond pretty well if you just sort of take a very straightforward approach and
I'd say,
and say, yes, it's a good question. Let's discuss.
We very much stress the use of correct anatomical terms from day dot. So from as soon as they enter school, I would even encourage, if you're in early childhood, even use them then, because we know with disclosures, and this is something that I explain to my students, that when a young child discloses, if they say, oh, he touched me on my muffin, well, your doll's called Muffin. Are you talking about the doll? So we very much, from a very young age, state you need to be using vagina, penis, testicles, breast, and things like that. And that those anatomical terms and that language is a very, very important part of them. And so we do an activity with the students where I put up those terms and they can write down all the different names that they know for them. And then we circle which ones are the appropriate ones that they can use. So there's no, oh, my wee wee or my poo poo or like anything like that, or my willy, it's penis and things like that. So I hope that answers your question.
So I hope those who've got penis on their bingo card for today's presentation. Right, good. No, that's fantastic. Thank you both. Really appreciate that. Any other questions there for our fabulous presenters? It's got a couple of minutes left. Well, not so much. Thank you, everybody, for coming along. Really appreciate you being here. I apologise. And Kate and Jess, at the start, I stuffed up with my screen. I apologise. We missed the first couple of slides. So I don't know if those are going to be made available to everyone.
I can send them through to you, Heather, if that helps.
Well, if anyone would like, it's probably better if people contact you and say, please, because Heather stuffed it up. I was thrown with my camera. I came as all sorted and then the camera didn't work and it just threw me. I do apologise. Thank you, everyone. Really interesting morning, and there's plenty more to come. So I hope to see you in the other sessions. Thanks very much.